This is not a comedy sketch. These are Brexiteers.
Would you listen to someone who
apologising?
I couldn't give us flying fart.
Yeah.
It's a
People don't understand it, so it's not democratic with you now.
Is this real? Is this real?
James Whale attempted to take on Peter Core, the organiser of the National Rejoin March.
We're joined by Peter Core. It's a good name, really, Peter, actually.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no. Core. I bet you when in school they shout, Core!
Do you remember the Cores? There was a band, wasn't there?
I promise this is not satire. This is a real interview. This is not Alan Partridge.
The most charitable thing and the least charitable thing you've ever done.
Grant in Bristol says his most charitable act was taking in a family of Ukrainians for a year.
And least charitable?
Surfing them out.
Help out the channel with a like and subscribe.
Anyway, Peter is in charge of the National Rejoin March. Is that right?
This is going to come up later, but just take note of the fact that he's actually asked Peter a question about something he should already know about.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, and that is taking place next week in the centre of the capital. And all those of you who are thick and stupid will probably be going there because you want to rejoin the European dictatorship. But I'm glad you've come in, Peter, just to explain why anybody would want to be part of a dictatorship. So go for it, please.
Well, the EU isn't a dictatorship.
It is a dictatorship.
Is it? So it's a bit,
no, it is a dictatorship.
How is it a dictatorship?
Well, if you can't answer that question, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Well, von der Leyen, you've only got one choice.
I'll explain why it isn't a dictatorship.
You think you can?
Again, this is not satire. He's challenging Peter as to whether or not he can prove that the elected bodies that exist within the EU are actually a dictatorship. This is wild.
MPs are elected by people, yeah? And the Commission, who I know you're talking about, are elected by the heads of states who are in the EU. What part of
Do you know
that
the
is
percentage
No one
of the
understands.
people?
No one
Do you know
understands.
That was a classic. I can only explain it to you. I can't understand it for you.
The percentage of the people who vote in European elections is minuscule.
It's over half the population, and it seems to be increasing in number.
Yeah.
It's a
People don't
dictatorship.
understand it, so it's not democratic because 90% of people don't understand it, so therefore, ergo, it's not democratic.
People vote for a parliament, and our heads of state put in place someone to represent their government. Ergo, it's not that fucking difficult to understand.
Could you apply that to the Brexit vote then?
Well, that was pure democracy. It was one man, one vote.
Oh,
You
so
couldn't get-
everyone understood that one?
Yeah, it was leave Europe or not.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't a plan after you did. It was leave Europe or not.
What do
Very
you do
basic.
for a living?
I'm a lorry driver.
Right. Why would you think that actually being in the Europe, apart from the obvious thing is getting through customs, there is absolutely no benefit? I voted to remain. I am so ashamed of myself that when I met my
should
lovely
be, yeah.
wife, she
Still.
convinced me that I'd done the wrong thing. And I thought about it.
I was
and
telling him for years, and he was
I ignored
had a
him,
go
because
at me.
would you listen
Said I
to
should
someone
be
who looked like him?
apologising. He said I should apologise for it.
So, and I apologise to the nation for voting to
Not
remain.
properly, not really.
But
Insults his co-host for his looks, and then admits he didn't understand it.
Yeah.
it's a
People don't
dictatorship.
understand it, so it's not democratic.
I think I've made my mark since then. We are dictated by a bunch of idiots in Brussels, and they are idiots. Now we're seeing that Austria, that Germany, a lot of French people I know do not want to have anything to do with the European dictatorship. They want to be out as well.
While it's true the far right are on the rise, a lot of those far righters are now no longer talking about Brexit or their equivalent Frexit or Exit. Meloni, the Italian far right leader, has calmed down rhetoric, and so has Marine Le Pen, who is also part of the far right. And this is in part down to the fact that they can all see the damage that Brexit has done to the UK economy.
It's the same in Spain and Italy.
Is that
Countries are getting fed up with it.
What you just said there goes against the polling, don't it?
Forget polling.
People you know
Forget
in France might not want to be in the EU.
polling, because polling is
Just look
quite
at the
often
referendum.
wrong.
There was the answer. The referendum. We didn't want to be in it. I mean, I wanted the free
Can I
movement.
just say,
I wanted to keep the trade.
we're still talking about 2016, right? For me, you can forget all about that.
Absolutely.
Right? It's about looking at the country we're in today, right now, and where we need to go from here.
Well, we
right?
haven't had Brexit. They didn't allow it to happen. They
Where do-
stifled it.
Are we in the
Hang
EU
on.
then?
Where
No,
do we?
but we
Where
need
do
So
it.
we did have Brexit.
We've taken the EU laws.
No, Parliament's choosing to keep those laws because they seem to work well. I'd love to know what he thinks about Scotland, because obviously they have to take laws on from Westminster and have no say in that.
In the EU, all but name.
But we've left the EU, haven't we?
Not really.
Not really,
We have,
no.
but we've got a lot
We
of
are
laws.
going to.
Is
We
it
are
just-
going to.
Right, okay.
We haven't left it. If we'd left it, we'd have our navy in the Channel, and we would not accept all these illegals coming over and breaking into our nation.
What would our navy do in the Channel?
They'd send
Return them to
back.
France and save lives because no people would drown.
How would you do that?
I
Return
don't
it
really
to France.
Hang on, I don't really care how they do
Return them
it.
to the French beach.
Because
You can't do that because you'd have to go into French international waters, which would be illegal. It's so full of contradiction. They talk about this idea of not breaking laws and doing things illegally, but then they're happy to do it themselves.
why are we allowing people to come in our country illegally? You see,
And here we go. It's all about the refugees. Or as they like to call them, illegal immigrants.
sit there with a smug view. I'm
Because I
I'm
don't-
getting annoyed with you now.
Is this real? Is this real?
Are you an idiot?
No.
You didn't bother to
I
Google
thought
the
we was
show.
talking about rejoining EU.
No,
And
we're talking about how
migrants
stupid.
coming across the channel.
Well, it's all part of what you want.
Did the
You want
migrants
open
come
borders.
across on small boats before we left the EU, by the way?
No, they came in the backs of lorries, and we managed to turn
why
the
was-
a
lorry
lot of
away.
them
Why was
died in
that?
that. They suffocated in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not good. We don't want people in here unless they come in here
No,
to
but
be part
you're,
of the
you're
country.
missing my point. They was coming before we left the EU.
The
They're
EU
coming now we've
yeah.
left the EU.
Right.
Leaving the EU has
Because
nothing to do
we
with the migration
haven't- of
crisis,
course
does
it
it?
does.
It's a lot worse now because Merkel said everyone can come into Germany. So now if we leave the EU, everyone who came in from around the world can come here.
No, they can't, because they've got to remain in Germany for 8 years first. And then we've had Brexit, so they can't move over to the UK. What the Talk TV host has just said is stupid. And unfortunately, anyone who takes note of this is now dumber.
No, they can't, because they have to become a citizen of the EU country they're in first. So they have to be a citizen in Germany for years.
Germany
before
want
they
to pull
can
out
come
of
to the
Schengen
EU.
now.
Hang
Even
on.
Germany are
Just a
going
minute.
against
Just a
it.
minute. So what would you do? We've had almost 100,000 young men come into this country. We pay them double what we give pensioners.
Yep.
Okay. Why?
No, we don't. He just lied. In the UK, the full new state pension is £203 per week as of 2023, and the older basic state pension was £156. Asylum seekers get £47 a week. That's not double, that's a quarter. A guy can't even do basic maths.
Hold on, you're a trucker.
Spread.
Truckers' wages went up a load since we left the EU because they
Yeah,
were
but-
held down,
but
weren't
not
they?
as much as inflation went up by. That's
Well,
weird,
they've
isn't
gone
it?
up to 40 grand or 50. They were in the doldrums when you had all
Our
the foreign.
inflation-
I am a lorry driver.
So
I'm
you
telling
know that's
now,
true, and you've got
my
facilities
wages,
were better.
My wages went up. My facilities are not
Everyone's
better at
wages
all.
have suffered with inflation. It's happened in Europe as well, but your wages.
And hang on a minute, have I benefited or not? 'Cause-
Yes, because truckers' wages went up loads.
But not as much as inflation, so
well,
I'm
no,
still
but
out,
a lot
I'm still
better
out
than
of pocket,
if
aren't
you're in
I?
the EU, you'd be in a lot worse trouble.
That's not true, though, is it?
Yeah, because you'd have Polish drivers and all the others keeping your
all
wages
of the
down.
research says that leaving the EU hit our economy by 5 to 8%.
Quantitative easing
doesn't.
is what's our economy. And what about?
I think Peter's doing a great job, but let's be clear. They're saying that they're correct and that the IMF are wrong, the OBR are wrong, the OECD are wrong, the Bank of England is wrong, Standard & Poor's wrong, Moody's wrong, Fitch Ratings wrong, the PwC is wrong, Goldman Sachs is wrong, Citigroup is wrong, the New York Times is wrong, the Washington Post is wrong, Wall Street Journal's wrong, and Bloomberg is wrong. Quantum physics makes more sense than these two.
The EU countries, their economy's in a worse state than ours, so how can that be true?
Well, if you're looking at individual countries, every individual country around the world has its own domestic problems.
Well, we were the
Of
leader of
course
the
it
G7,
do,
the
right?
fastest growing economy in the last
if,
figures.
if you look at any EU country who's got problems now, and then add on, if they left the EU, there'd be way worse problems now.
Not
after
if you look at it.
than
Look
if
at
they
what's
stayed
going
in.
on in the EU. They're not in a good state, are they?
What's going on in the EU?
Well,
so,
But we had
I
a vote, and the majority said leave Brexit, and it was stifled by our political
and
classes.
the only
we've
country-
left the EU.
But we
so
haven't.
now-
The
so now-
Speaker was
now
even
we-
against it.
Now we know what life is like.
We don't, because they stifled
outside
it.
the EU.
We've got EU laws. We've got thousands of
EU
EU
laws because we trade with the EU. I say we don't want to trade with the EU anymore.
I wanted to keep the trade laws.
So he's happy with some EU laws, but earlier he said he wanted them all gone. You need those laws in order to be able to trade with the EU. We've already been damaged by the lack of trade that we're getting with the EU, which has dropped by 30% in physical goods. These guys are just delusional.
We just don't want their other. Why should they decide other laws?
If you want to trade with the EU, then you've got to follow their standards. That means you've got to make a decision as to whether you keep that or you trade with the rest of the world. There are 197 countries, according to the UN, and about 37 of them can actually trade with us and buy our expensive goods. Out of those 37, 27 are in the EU. Do you want to trade with them or not? And it seems like they do, but they seem to be muddling up those trade laws with other laws that the UK government has decided to keep. It's absolutely bizarre, but it's also bordering on a level of conspiracy theories. Something straight out of the X-Files.
Laws like what?
Well, every other law.
Like what?
Well, like, you know,
Name
our,
one.
our Hoovers must be this strength.
The Hoover law was to stop it being overpowered so the actual device lasts longer. It's to help consumers, and he hates it.
green issues, we got to do this.
Considering Britain's green and pleasant land stereotype has existed for decades, it's funny how Brexiteers seem to hate it. But also, we've got an issue with sewage, which is being poured into our seas and rivers, but he doesn't seem to be that bothered about it. But it was protected when we were in the EU.
What we don't want our law. We all decide our own laws.
You know,
Our
British
politicians are
MEPs
too
also
fun.
wrote those
That's it.
laws, don't
Yeah.
they?
Well,
But
I mean, no one knows how it works, the system, so it's not democratic. If the people don't understand how it works, it's not democratic.
I'm a lorry driver, right?
You keep telling us that.
That I know how it
I
works.
see.
Well, most people
If I
don't.
know how it works,
No.
anyone can learn how it works.
But they
Why?
don't- it's too
Hang on. Are
complicated.
you suggesting lorry drivers are thick? Well, I mean, I
Yeah, exactly.
apologise to all my lorry drivers who
By
tuned
the
into
way,
the programme.
von der
Very
Leyen,
sorry about
when there was
that.
a vote for the president, von der Leyen was the only name on the paper. A bit like Saddam Hussein and that, and Putin. In fact, Putin's more, at least he has another name on.
And Boris Johnson when he
Well, no,
was...
he had,
Why would
it
you
was
pick on
Corbyn.
Boris Johnson?
It was
Because he
Corbyn.
was the only name on that ticket too.
What, on Corbyn? With Corbyn?
No, when he stood to be leader of the Conservative Party.
That's all right. You know, I don't
that's
think...
all right.
No, that's
dem-
how the
that's
law
demo-
is.
that's
It's
demo-
done-
Honestly, these guys couldn't pour water out of a boot with instructions printed on the heel. The gymnastics they're pulling in order to create some level of logic, it's almost on an Olympian level, but essentially what it really comes down to, they're grifters. They will say anything to try and get the audience on side with them, or what they think will get the audience on side with them, even if it's detrimental to people's logic and thinking. And on that note, once again, thank you to all my Patreon YouTube supporters. You keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to help out, there's a link in the description. Otherwise, hit that like and subscribe button. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.